On tonight's programme, as a report into funding political parties is published, we'll be asking how much money should they get, and more importantly, where should it come from? Also, is our obsession with protecting our children having disastrous repercussions?
Quite remarkably, children are being increasingly treated in a way which is more appropriate to criminals in prison.
Good evening. Well, aside from the questions of transparency and integrity already discussed by our colleagues on Newsnight, there's another pressing reason to examine party funding here in Scotland. Next year's Holyrood elections are less than 7 months away, and going by the turnout last time, the parties will have their work cut out persuading the electorate to even bother voting. Unfortunately, campaigning costs money these days, about as much money as you can get. So if you're a small Holyrood party or even an independent, is it fair that the other parties are considerably richer than you? One thing is clear from Maury's interim report. People want to see greater transparency in the way political parties are funded. The recent scandal about loans for peerages no doubt reinforced this view. They also want to see caps on the level of donations made by individuals and organisations, so they don't exercise undue influence on the party and government. But there's a problem here. When quick-fit tycoon Tom Farmer donated £100,000 to the SNP, he said it was to help ensure next May's elections are fought on a level playing field. A few days later, he told a newspaper in the long term, Scottish independence was inevitable. The truth is that when rich people donate money, it's for a reason. The problem is working out what that reason is. Money's a big issue for Scottish parties in the run-up to next year's elections. These days, campaigns are expensive. Would public cash and a cap on donations give the electorate the transparency they want? After all, parties with Westminster seats receive some public money already, something the smaller parties at Holyrood say is grossly unfair. Well, the Labour Party didn't want to take part tonight, but I am joined now by the Green MSP Patrick Harvie, and in Aberdeen is the SNP MSP Stuart Stevenson. Patrick Harvie, why do political parties like you need to spend so much money? It's not as if you can't get the message across. You have free access to the media.
Well, we don't have entirely free access to the media. We still have to pay for the production of election broadcasts and the like. The Green Party spends considerably less than most of the other parties, and I think it would be a positive thing if all parties in total spent quite a bit less than the large numbers of millions of pounds. But what does annoy me and annoy other Green activists is when we see other parties who do already receive hundreds of thousands of pounds of state funding then coming out and saying that other parties, smaller parties, should be excluded from that. But
at elections, you do have proportionate access to the media. You can get your message across. I mean, do you really think that having more money means that more people are going to vote for you?
No, I don't. And I think that if parties as a whole campaign more effectively on the streets, knocking door to door, taking part in events in local communities rather than spending money on billboards and call centres, I think that would be a positive thing. I don't think any magic wand is going to miraculously bring turnout back up again, but I think that would be a positive step. But where public funding is being spent, it should be spent across the board fairly rather than hogged by parties at Westminster. The Green parties in Scotland, England and Wales are represented at council level, devolved level, in the European Parliament, and yet because we have no MPs at Westminster, we're not allowed to access these policy development grants which Labour, Tory, Lib Dem and SNP all access.
OK, well, Stuart Stevenson, I presume you can see why the taxpayer might be a bit perturbed by this, or the ordinary voter, because in the past, parties in, say, the 40s, 50s, 60s spent comparatively far less. More people voted, more people were members. How can modern parties justify spending so much more?
Well, I think that both Labour and the Tory parties in the last couple of decades have very much wanted to control elections from the centre. And that, of course, has shifted the activity away from local campaigning to centrally directed, expensive billboard, newspaper adverts, slick PPBs and so on and so forth. And that's been one of the factors.
So the answer then should be, presumably, to make parties spend what they can earn, as it were. In other words, if you can enthuse people to join you and pay membership fees, if you keep donations low to a reasonable level, say about a couple of thousand that some people can afford, then it will be eventually a level playing field. The most popular parties will have the most money.
Well, today's report certainly, as one of the areas it examines, looks at capping donations and capping spending, and I think that's certainly worth pursuing. But the key thing that's behind the discontent, I think, has to be, of course, the current furore over the potential illegal sales of peerages and knighthoods.
Well, is the answer to that, then, capping donations? It seems like the logical way to go.
Capping donations is certainly one way of doing it. Certainly we have a situation where Tory donors have been cautioned, Labour donors have been charged, and the Liberal Democrats' biggest donor is in jail. That hardly builds public confidence.
But you're
and
also relying on large donations, it has to be said.
We are very open and honest, of course, about our donations. We announce them as they're received.
But you won't be handing them back because they're too big.
It's not the size of donations that's the issue. It's how donations are given to parties. It's the public trust that is being misspent by manipulation of the political honours system to gather money in for the big parties. Labour's taken 80% of its money from peers they've created.
Patrick Harvie, it's not the size of donations that's at issue.
Well, I can't help thinking that the phrase "they would say that, wouldn't they" springs to mind. I think the size of donations does matter, and it does create a perception that parties are having to go cap in hand to whether to millionaires or to corporations or indeed to trade unions sometimes. I think that creates a negative perception.
So if you were offered 100,000, you'd say, no, far too much, we'll only take 10.
Well, I did notice that Sir Tom Farmer said that he wanted to create a level playing field. If that's the case, I'll be watching the letterbox with interest, but I'm not sure I expect very much. I think the main thing is that if parties which are going to millionaires and other donors quite legitimately and saying, please support our aims, please help us fight the election campaign, they're also taking money from public funding, from the taxpayer, and it creates a system where smaller parties are absolutely excluded by the structures that we're working in.
OK, Patrick Harvie, Stuart Stevenson, unfortunately we have to leave it there, but thank you both very much indeed.